There again. Anyway, to discuss these, Sally and I are joined by Alpesh Patel from Perfinium Partners, and anyone who's a regular watcher of the shows knows that this is the time when the gloves come off, right?
Here comes trouble.
Good morning, Alpesh. Looking at the Financial Times, the situation in Greece, the Prime Minister looking for a vote of confidence. We don't know when that is going to happen. But do you think the EU, membership of the EU and the Euro has become almost like a straitjacket for this country?
Well, most definitely. They can't have fiscal policy, which they would have liked, because that's dictated by the constraints that they have in terms of being part of this, what has now become a terrible club to be a part of. I mean, other than the Serbians, I don't think anybody else wants to join the EU at the moment. What's disappointing about this is the Prime Minister of Greece talks about a duty to the Greek people. Well, actually, his duty to the Greek people is to default, because why should they have to keep on paying for a financial mess not actually created by them? It was put upon them by very clever investment bankers who said, no, don't worry, go into the EU, you'll be fine, we'll just need to dodge the figures a little bit, fudge them a bit, and you'll be fine. And why should the IMF and the German people and the French people and God forbid the British people as well throw good money after bad when we all know, look, they're going to default. They're too small not to default.
Do you think this is a situation where you see democracy and perhaps what's really needed to get a country back on track sort of going in different directions? And that's the difficulty, isn't it? Because, of course, many are just saying, look, Greece has got to go through this terrible pain. They have to introduce these austerity measures and see them through in order to survive. And yet, obviously, the people are just so angry. They're showing their angst. And the government has not got the backing and the security it needs to see through change. Do you think it's that dilemma, isn't it?
Thank God they don't have a dictatorship, because you're right. If they
I'm not saying dictatorship is right.
They could have bulldozed things if they did have some kind of dictatorial government. And people say, you know, this is the benefit of China in terms of growth. It can just bulldoze things straight through. The thing with the democratic voice of Greece is it's not actually being heard, which is why they're throwing things at their legislators. Because what the democratic voice is, default, get us out of this mess, get us out of the EU even.
But that's not, I mean, you say that, but it's not as clear a voice, is it? Because many are saying that actually the Greek people aren't 100% sure as to what is the right answer. They just know it's incredibly difficult. This is so painful, and whatever happens, it is going to be painful.
I can't imagine there's a single person in Greece, other than the politicians who have to face up to the Germans each week and answer calls every afternoon about how they're going to get out of this mess. There is a single person in Greece who is saying, yes, let's just keep on paying these extortionate levels of debt that we've got ourselves into, not of our own making. I can't imagine there's a single sane person in Greece saying, yeah, let's just go through this pain. For what? For what, exactly?
It's interesting, because this is eerily reminiscent of the structural adjustment period that happened in many developing countries in the 80s and in the 90s. Greece is going through exactly the same thing. And when you speak of dictatorship, a lot of our viewers in the developing world will be thinking, oh, we remember when the IMF was ramming this kind of stuff down our throats as well.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think they'll have too much sympathy for the European experiment and the so-called wealthy countries who we now discover aren't quite as wealthy as we thought they were, because it was all on borrowed money and therefore borrowed time.
Now, the Irish Times, many are arguing, could be next. In fact, my guest just now on World Business Report saying Ireland could be following in Greece's footsteps. But we've got a very angry shareholder there, being quite practical about his angst.
Yeah, he's throwing an egg. He's obviously had enough.
Of them, in fact.
Yeah, he's thrown 2 eggs. He's had double enough. The serious point about this is, look, the Irish are proud people. And again, why should they have to go around, cap in hand, asking for bailouts? And equally, why should the British, the French and the Germans be bailing them out? For God's sake, Ireland and Greece, get out of your pain. Just say, 2 fingers, we're not going to pay. We're going to default because we're not going to screw our people to the ground over these financial constraints put upon us.
What about the impact down the line? Because we've been talking about the exposure to Greek Greek debt. We've been talking about the exposure to Irish debt. What about the impact down the line if both countries do
What credit are they going to get at the end of all of this? Do you think if they somehow just keep on paying, become essentially indentured labour, become slave labour to the rest of Europe as they keep on paying off the debts, as they're working to pay probably 75% of their income in taxation? Do you think they're going to get credit further down the line? People can say, oh yes, no, we can trust the Irish and the Greeks. They won't let you down. No, it'll be exactly the same as if they default, because in the end, as with Argentina and other major countries which have defaulted, you just get on with business. If you can trust the companies, you can trust the person on the ground. You might not be able to trust the governments, but then again, whoever did.
Well, I was going to say, because that's a big issue with Greece, isn't it? Because a lot of the people feel that the politicians can't be trusted, and they are, you know, there's a lot of nepotism, there's a lot of corruption within the Greek government. So if they were to default, they'd be frozen out of the international markets, and they'd be in a position where they're on their own. And I guess the Greek people feel, but we don't trust those who are in charge of our country.
I don't think they would be frozen out. I think all that would happen is that the debt they would ever try and raise would simply be valued at the correct level, which it is in any event at the moment, which will be near junk bond status. So, fine. It'll be priced accordingly to what level it should be. But at least the companies won't be taxed to the hilt. At least the people won't be taxed to the hilt, and they can get on with rebuilding their lives. I mean, for God's sake, countries have been defaulting for long enough. Individuals, the number of individual bankruptcies and insolvencies, I'm not saying people should forgo their obligations, but there gets a point where it's effectively becoming slave labour, and that's what it is for the Irish and the Greek people.
Let's move on to the global edition of the New York Times. The Chancellor of the Exchequer, George Osborne, putting a very positive spin on the state of the UK economy. However, the figures seem to suggest that the country isn't out of the woods yet, Alpesh.
Well, thank God a politician who does a key aspect of his job, which is to inspire people. I mean, you call it spin. Yes, we know what kind of mess we're in. But he quoted Winston Churchill. Now, you'd probably call it in the middle of the Second World War. You probably would have said, well, it's a bit of a spin, because actually the Germans are getting one over on us. Well, yes, we're in a mess, but what he's saying is, look, we need our entrepreneurs to get out there. And there's probably people waking up now and they're thinking, look, I don't know if I'm going to have a job today. I don't know how I'm going to get a job. And inspiration alone won't help you do those things. But by God, if you don't have that part of it, you're not going to get anywhere anyway. And he is absolutely right to say, look, we rely on exports, we rely on inward investment, and we rely on SMEs to start hiring people. So, yeah, it's good that he's called it the way it actually is, because it isn't as bad as it's been portrayed by, dare I say, journalists.
But SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, do you feel that they're getting the support they need in this country and, the backing from the banks? Because there's so many stories out there that small and medium-sized companies are really struggling to operate in this environment where the banks are saying, no, we're not going to lend to you.
I think you're absolutely right on the lending thing, and that story's been running for quite a while. I think one thing in terms of support, the thing about entrepreneurs is they always find ways to work around problems. The one thing which would be incredibly helpful is, look, please do something about the startups where if you've got the first 10 employees, national insurance is waived for a period of time, tax is reduced for a period of time, so we can actually start hiring a few people, because at the moment it's too expensive. Just that one little thing, and you'll resolve half your unemployment problem. So that's the one area where I don't think there's quite enough support yet, and I think this government will actually do something about that, because I think they get it.
Okay, we're going to have to wrap up. Unfortunately, not enough time to look at the stargaze, but if you are flying first class these days, as Alpesh does, it's most likely that the millionaire next to you will be from...
Private jet.
Well, okay. Well, if your jet is parked next to Alpesh's, most likely the one next to yours is from China. Thank you so much for coming in, Alpesh. Really do appreciate it. And that's our newspaper review, Sally.
It is indeed. Thanks a lot. We'll see you soon.